for you all to access or to refer to students. And then also, how is it that you all could take care of yourselves as well? Because y'all are human too. Y'all need support too. You can be activated by these things too. Y'all are just as important. So when we're talking about de-escalation, we have to understand why we need to de-escalate and where are we de-escalating from. And so with the Trauma Resource Institute, with that CREM model, it presents us our well-being zone or our OK zone. This is essentially our battery capacity to deal with the things that life throws with us, the things that are planned and not planned. This is how you can kind of locate and pinpoint yourself and your energy levels of like, yes, I can handle this today. Or you know what, I can't handle this. I need some extra support. Maybe I need to tap on a friend or a colleague's shoulder. Maybe I need to leave work early, take a walk outside or something. This helps you to know what you need to do. So we have these top blue and bottom lines. These are the boundaries of the zone. And as you see this flowing red light, oh, I just realized. I literally just realized that. Okay. Let's make sure we're recording.
I started recording, so we're good. Yep, we're set.
See, I was almost bumped out of my wellness zone right there. Okay. So yes, we see this flowing red line. That is your cortisol levels throughout the day. That is your adrenaline. And it can fluctuate even though you're in your OK zone. So if we were to go through like my typical morning prior to this injury, let's say I'm waking up at 6:30, my alarm's going off, I'm walking my dog, having breakfast on my commute, my energy's rising up, I'm at work, I see my colleagues, my friends, I'm doing well. Probably had coffee, so my energy is kind of crashing here. I had a meeting that definitely could have been an email, but I'm meeting with students and clients, and they're filling me back up. I'm clocking out, I'm back home, I see my dog. So I was in my OK zone throughout all of that, even though my energy fluctuated. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So again, here's my zone. Let's say something is happening on campus. We have a particular preacher coming up. That is the thing that is activating you or the student. That's the little thunderbolt that we have there. It's a stressful event, maybe not necessarily traumatic, but it's one that's kind of knocking you out of your zone. What used to be that fluctuating red line is now a green jagged line. And if you see, we're bumped above our zone, we're bumped below our zone. And these are still good points for us to know, because if I'm bumped high of my zone, I am in my hyper-arousal state. And these are just some suggestions as to what that could look like for you. You could be more irritable, more short with people. You're not as jovial as you used to be. You're experiencing intense anxiety or panic or disruption in your emotional state. I hope that you know that for yourself. And I hope that's a growing thing that you learn about yourself as you encounter things throughout your life. And the opposite of our high zone, we also have our low zone where we are hypo-aroused. So if I am on campus, a preacher is saying a particular thing and I'm bumped down outside of my wellness zone, excuse me. These are some ways in which I could be showing up. Maybe I'm more saddened. Maybe I'm more numb, nonchalant. I'm kind of letting it bounce off of me, but not in a resilient sort of way. And these are just suggestions, right? And particularly when we're seeing these in students, if we're seeing someone who might be a little bit more quiet, we don't want to assume that they're knocked out of their zone, right? Maybe they're just focusing on their next test exam. They could have some AirPods in and they're listening to music. They're not even listening to the preacher. But this is at least a checkpoint for us of like, hey, I'm noticing this thing. Let me become curious about it as opposed to judge it, okay? And then these are some other suggestions or ways in which students could be presenting in relation to preachers or any other stressful things across different aspects. So in terms of like their thinking, how it is they're processing things, they might be having a disruption of sleep. They're getting quantity, but they're not getting good quality of sleep, nightmares, forgetfulness. They're maybe not making the best decisions for themselves, not necessarily risky or any self-harming kind of way, but maybe they chose to drink 5 cups of coffee that day, and that's not good. Emotionally, maybe they're more disruptive, experiencing more intense feelings of rage or grief. Physically, it could be feeling a lot of stress in their shoulders, tight muscles, upset stomach. Spiritually, feeling like they're disconnected, like they're lost and wandering. They're not really tied down to any sort of community. Behaviorally, they could be isolating or they could be causing a lot of ruckus and attention and all of the gray that happens in between there. And then relationally, if you're seeing a student who is usually pretty active and doing all of the clubs on campus and now they're not going to any meetings, they're not showing up to any of their classes or whatnot, that could be a sign that something is off. Or it could be someone who is all of a sudden wanting to do all of the things and overexert themselves. Again, you can see both sides of the line, and then of course all the gray in between that too.
All right, so what I wanted to share with you a little bit here is also helping to frame the students that the stress response in itself isn't a bad thing, right? We want our nervous system to handle both sides of things. So the sympathetic nervous system kicks in when someone is feeling really stressed and they're feeling danger or they're feeling threatened, which might be what is coming up for students when they're experiencing something in the plaza. But we also want students to know that they can regulate their nervous system by bringing themselves back into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest. So a lot of the things we might be thinking about in this role in particular is recognizing when someone has like shot out of that well-being zone, even more so the ones that are feeling stuck and they're not having an opportunity to regulate. So some of the things we're going to be sharing with you is like, what can we do to help students get that parasympathetic nervous system back under control? So some of the techniques we'll share with you here in a few moments is what that looks like. Another framing that we share with students is, helping them understand this sort of stress cycle, this ups and downs. And if they're feeling stuck, asking them questions like, what would it look like to kind of finish this stress cycle? Like that was a really stressful moment and it seems like you're still really stuck in that moment. What would it look like for you to get back out of that moment? What do you do when you're feeling really stressed? Let's see if we can help you to do some of that. And so this idea of finishing the stress cycle, because otherwise you're still stuck and you're still elevated, or you're too stuck in the low zone. So we're actually going to help you work through those final steps together. And they often have that, they all hopefully have some of that self-knowledge. So it's asking them some questions that will help them get connected to that. All right, so these are some of the skills from the community resilience model. The community resilience model comes out of the Trauma Resource Institute, and you can actually find their app for free. It's called the iChill app. We've also brought them to campus to do a large group training back in 2021. We were all still remote, I think, but many of us might have been a part of that. And they're teaching all of these skills. And we now have facilitators who are leading this, like Maria and many of my colleagues in the health education team. Vivian Abramson app specifically brought this to campus. And so we have many, many people trained as community resilience model trainers. And so they're able to do this going forward. But the idea behind these skills is they are simple. They are easy, they are accessible. You don't need special tools or devices or anything like that. These are things that we can tap into, and they are, have some really strong evidence behind them to help you move through that. So the couple that I think we're going to introduce to you today is tracking and grounding. Resourcing is another great one, helping people think about what is my innate skills to kind of work through this. We'll introduce you to help now skills, which are like very tangible, do these things right now. And then a couple others that we won't get into today is around gesturing and shift and stay. But when you learn the community resilience model, you get some introduction to all of these, which is also really helpful. All right.
So the first skill we're going to go over is tracking. And the concept or the thought behind this is what we pay attention to grows. It like paints the lens in which you see the world. If I am having a great day and I am focusing on that, I'm focusing on my good mood, the happy thoughts that I'm having, the outlook with perspective is that, the world is okay today and I am doing fine. But if I'm not doing too hot and I'm more in a low state, I'm more saddened and I'm focusing on those saddened thoughts and feelings, then that is going to make my perspective of the world and how I show up in it very dreary. So what we pay attention to grows. Tracking helps us to track what it is that we're paying attention to. It's that foundational skill that helps us to, again, locate ourselves within our okay zone, particularly in regards to our nervous system, and noticing what's happening, but not necessarily judging it. Again, like I said earlier, becoming curious about those sensations, the physical sensations, as opposed to getting focused on our feelings. So as we're talking through this, you might hear us say things like, what are the pleasant or unpleasant sensations that you're noticing? And that's to help increase your awareness of the other things or that biofeedback that our body is giving us. So this was a study that the Trauma Resource Institute did. I think they conducted this with like 100 people, self-report. And these folks indicated on a body image where it is that they've felt sensations related to particular emotions. So here you see for anger, a lot of folks indicated that they felt sensations in the upper half of their body. So a lot in the chest and a lot in their heads. Whereas folks who might have experienced depression or sadness felt it in the lower half. This doesn't mean that if you're angry and you're feeling it in your feet that there's something wrong with you. That's just, when you're feeling it, and that's okay. The differences between like the blue and the yellow is just a matter of that intensity. Yellow shows regions of increased sensation, while blue represents more decreased intensity, sensation of those things. For folks who indicated love, they pretty much felt it all over their body. For neutral, you're not feeling any sensations there. So as we're talking about things, or as you leave this presentation and you're tracking your emotions, see what sensations are also accompanied by those things and where you're feeling them in your body. So these are some words. Yes, these are words to kind of help increase your vocabulary of sensations, because when we try to differentiate between sensations and feelings, it can be kind of hard. But these are ways in which you can kind of create that distinction, focusing on those physical characteristics. And what we're actually going to do is do a quick little tracking thing that you can do for yourself. You can obviously introduce this to students. And so to your level of comfortability, I would love for you to take your hands together and you can put them on your thighs and just rub them together. I'm not going to tell you how fast or how slow, how intensely, but I just want you to do that for a few seconds. And now I want you to stop and keep your palms open. And take a second to notice the sensations of your hands, or maybe elsewhere that's popping up. And if folks want to share what are those things, those pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral sensations you're noticing.
I think I just naturally planted my feet a little more whenever I'm doing some kind of exercise. So it was less in my hands, but I could really feel below my knees, sort of that grounded feeling.
I felt like I got out of my cognitive space.
And that's a really good point, because for students in academia, they're all up here. This is all they know, become to know, whether it's 4 years or 5 years or however long they're here. And so to bring them back into their body, especially into their heart, that's something that's going to be unfamiliar. That's something that could be new to them, but it's just as equally important to know. So for some of you, you may have noticed maybe like some tingling, maybe a change in temperature. First it was really hot, and then once we kept our palms open, it got a little colder. These are things that you can track for yourself, and especially in the moment where you're bumped out of your okay zone or when you're feeling activated.
All right, so the next one we're going to talk about is grounding. And I think this is a very applicable skill to how we might support someone. And like you were already starting to say that, just naturally you were starting to feel yourself grounded in the floor. So grounding is helping us, again, it's another strategy to get us out of our thinking brain and back into our body. And it brings a sense of safety when we can start to feel connected to the world, connected to our body. You can do grounding while laying down, while standing, while sitting, lots of different ways of doing that. But it is a very core technique to get people out of sort of like that worry brain or that really activated space. And so this is what we're talking about when we're talking about grounding. The other thing that it's doing is it's bringing us back into the present moment. So it's helping us feel our bodies right here, right now, whether it's, feet on the floor, laying down in the grass. You can ground to any different thing. When I think about on the plaza on a day like today, it's like, where can you feel the wind? Can you feel it in your hair? Is it moving your sleeve of your shirt, right? It's just bringing your attention from something else into your body and your experiences. And so where can I feel the sun on my face right now? Those are some grounding techniques can be really helpful. A lot of grounding techniques will also bring someone to their breath, which can be useful. Some people feel As soon as they put attention to their breath, they stop breathing. And so they're holding their breath, they're feeling like they have to force their breath. So sometimes breathing works for some people and not for others, but these are some of the different grounding strategies that we're talking about with that. Want to talk about researching?
So resourcing, this is the third skill we're teaching you today. This is particularly my favorite. I imagine this is something that you naturally do. We're just giving you some suggested language for it to label it. But resourcing is the thing that you bring up within yourself, within your being, within your mind, maybe something or someone that you can physically contact. It could be a person, place, animal, real or imagined, that brings you a sense of relief, gives you a moment to reset, maybe brings up more pleasant emotions within yourself. And this is something that is low cost, low energy, that sort of thing. For example, when I would do this with my kiddos, I had a kiddo who we were working on emotional regulation, and their resource was Harry Potter world. And so whenever they were dysregulated, they would bring up Hogwarts, they would bring up their respective house. I think they were a Hufflepuff. And they would think about that and like wearing the cloak, and that kind of gave them a moment to reset, kind of gave them a little break from reality, if you will. And they were able to come back into their okay zone. And so if we look at this picture, we have folks around a table. What could be some examples of resourcing here? Again, person, place, thing, real or imagined. Yes, that's my favorite. Looks like they got some, maybe like some pizza, some coffee or something.
Enjoying each other's company.
Social. Either someone has a really awesome living room, or maybe they're in a restaurant or something.
Pretty good ambiance.
Yeah.
We're seeing smiles, we're seeing raised cheeks, so it could be like laughter, someone's telling a joke. These are all moments of resourcing. So it doesn't have to be like, oh, it's that place or that trip in Barbados that I went to. Like it could be that, but it could also be something as quote unquote simple as just being out with your friends, with your buddies. So here are some examples of my resources. Again, people, places, things, real or imagined. This is me and my partner. We were doing the Water and Lantern Festival that Windsor has. I think it just passed actually too. This is some really great ramen that I had in my hometown of Chicago. This was about 2 years ago, and I still think about it. These are me and my friends. We were at a rodeo down in Denver. And then this is a meme, but this is Bingo from Bluey. I really love Bluey. But also in general, I love memes. And so when I notice that I'm low or when I'm really irritated, I might watch funny videos on YouTube. My friends, if they notice it, they might send me a few memes to cheer me up. So these are some of my resources. And these are other examples of resources, the things that play into your five senses, the smell, sight, touch, taste, all that. Could be sounds, could be the rain, the wind, your favorite music, places that again are either real or imagined, places that you could have gone to or that you have been to in the past. Could be people, your colleagues, your friends, the students' professors, or their academic advisors, your roommates. Or it could be traditions, the things that are coming from folks' cultural backgrounds, the personal traditions or meaningful things that you do for yourself personally. Those could be that. And there's also resourcing in community. I'm sure there have been moments where you're with a friend and they're telling you about this wonderful thing, and you kind of get yourself catching a dose of like that secondhand happiness or whatnot. You can also do that. And so when you're with students and they're activated, or if you're able to get them back into their wellness zone, you can still do these things. Just because we got them back into their wellness zone doesn't mean that we don't do these things. If anything, we would like this to become a habitual practice that becomes natural for folks to do. Oh, that was interesting.
I just wanted to share one example that we sometimes teach around resourcing is we'll ask students to pull out their phones and go to their photos and just without overthinking it, just give your photos a scroll and find a photo that is something that is a resource for you, right? And then they'll be like, oh yeah, it's my dog, it's my cat, it's this sunset I took a picture of. Like it helps them like get out of that thinking brain again and just like do something really tangible to look at something, or here's my favorite meme or video or something like that. So the help now skills are another one that we think is really helpful. And these are very small things we can do with someone or ourselves when we're feeling activated. The first one is to listen to sounds. So again, it's bringing ourselves out of that thinking brain. What can you hear right now? What's in this space? Might not be a great one when we're having yelling and chaos on the plaza. So, use these with some thought. Feel the temperature, right? It's the same idea. Like, does it feel hot? Does it feel cold? Can you feel the temperature of the sun right now on your body? Count to 10. This is such a simple one, but it is effective. Touch something. This is a grounding technique. So, like, can you put your hand on the cement or touch this tree? What are you feeling? What are you noticing? Pushing against a wall is a good one. Students really seem to like this one. It's this idea of like physically pushing your body and putting some of that tension into an immovable object. So it's helping them like release. It's a sort of a progressive muscle relaxation technique as they're pushing into an immovable force, and it's helping to reduce some of that physical tension in their body. Noticing your surroundings. I love this time of year because there's so many things to notice, like looking at which trees are already changing and how much progress has we seen and where are there still flowers blooming, little things like that. Going for a walk. I think this is probably one of our go-to strategies is to get a student away from this space, get them to someplace nice. The other side of the student center hopefully will be peaceful and lovely. You can take a look at the A and the mountains and go to the lagoon, like that sort of like getting away is helpful. And the other thing about taking a walk with someone is that it cuts down any pressure to maintain eye contact while you're speaking. So now I don't have to look at you because that might be really hard for me right now, but we can walk side by side and we can have a conversation. Sometimes the best conversations happen for those reasons. Likewise, when you're in a car with someone, all of a sudden the talking really gets going because there's no pressure to maintain eye contact with someone. So that can be really useful. Having a drink of water, offering to get someone a drink of water can be a really nice one when they're feeling really activated. It's shifting that attention to something else. Excusing yourself to go to the bathroom. They might excuse themselves to go to the bathroom, focusing on just one thing. So these are 10 skills. It's approximately 10 skills that you can employ right then and there to help yourself get back into your okay zone or help someone else. All right.
And so for the next, I think 3 slides, we kind of grouped up some questions that you can ask students. The first one here is exploratory questions. You don't have to be a licensed counselor to say these things. You can use them. And also trust yourself too. You've been doing this work for a really long time. You've been around students. You know how to talk to them too. But just here are some suggestions. So I'll let you read over that. I think I'll explain number 3. I noticed a physical characteristic plus an inquiry. So that could be like, hey, student, I noticed that you are bouncing your leg a lot. I'm kind of curious as to what that means. Like, could you tell me more about that? Or like just become inquisitive.
I think one of the hard things out on the plaza for me is the first question. Like, it feels easy after that if you start the conversation. What I've noticed they'll say is, I just want to check in. Are you doing all right? And there does feel like some kind of like, not judgment, but like, okay, you noticed something about me that would indicate to you. And so that first question for me feels like the hardest one of how do I enter with the person that I'm at least perceiving to be sending a lot of that energy. And then the rest feels way easier if they're like, oh yeah, I'm doing okay, and then you start talking.
Yeah, and I think there's validity in that too, right? Because even if you ask somebody like, hey, are you doing all right? They may not even know that for themselves. So one of the things that I would love to encourage about you all is like, recognize the fact that you're not going to know, and maybe they're not going to know, and that's okay. You can not know together. And then also, how can we like support each other and maybe incorporate these skills or get them to do something that they already know works for them? So the next set of questions are to increase insight or awareness about a student situation. It could be that you spent 5 seconds with the student. It could be that you are able to pull them to the side and have like a 5-minute conversation. But this can kind of help you get a better understanding as to what's going on for this student, maybe help guide them to explore that for themselves if they're still, getting tripped up on language, which is fair. But this can also give you some better direction or clarity as to what resource you might point them in or what could be a suitable skill for them to use in the moment. So what is it that you're looking for or wanting? How would you like for yourself or me to be involved in like support if you feel like follow-up is needed or something. The typical on a scale of 1 to 10, 10, you're living your best life, 1, you're not. Where are you? And then lastly, these last sets of questions are action oriented. If follow-up is needed, or like, let's say we are trying to figure out a quick skill that a student could do or a resource, this kind of helps us kind of narrow down our options. So, I don't know.
Oh, different.
Okay, cool. I really like the move forward. I know a person at this office. May I connect you? I think we can all understand that a warm handoff or a personal connection to an office really goes a long way with the students. So that's something that I typically look for. And again, these are suggestions. Y'all have asked action questions before, trust yourself, but if these are helpful to you, great. So we have about 30 minutes, doing great. We have some questions that we would love for you all to kind of group with your seatmates and talk about, like, what does it look like to actually track with a student? If tracking doesn't feel like it's the most accessible skill to use during a Plaza interaction, go to your knowledge. What have you used in the past, or what have you previously used with students? And maybe you'll hear new skills or new pieces of information from your colleagues that you might not have thought of before. So we have like this little self-care plan, and this is something that you can also apply for yourself too. What would it look like to widen your resiliency zone? Meaning giving yourself more battery capacity to deal with life's curveballs when they throw it at you. Just because someone might have a more narrow resilient zone doesn't mean that they're any weaker or that they're not capable. That's just all that they have within them, and that is still enough to work with. And if we can get it just a little bit bigger, how could we do that? If you found any of these skills useful, which ones do you think you might put into your routine? Which one really kind of seemed like your jam? What areas of your self-care plan, whether you literally have some steps figured out, or if you just kind of have like a general idea of what really works for you, how could you make that better? I'm not saying what you're doing is wrong or that it's worse, but how could we make it better? You deserve better. So what does that look like? And then what could be something, a statement or a reminder that you give yourself, a sticky note on your office door or on your laptop to just kind of give you a boost of encouragement. I think most often people are their biggest critic and their biggest fan. And so in my work with students, I really try to get them to be like their number one fan, which I know is a hard thing to do, but how can we get that to happen for you? Okay, cool. So I would love for y'all to talk to each other. That'd be great. I'll give you like 5 minutes. I'll hold the time, so don't worry about that. I'll bring you back. But kind of answer these questions or get insight from your seatmates. Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this goes to actually what might be and realize you don't have to do a big huge thing. It could be one class. That's a really helps.
For me, also because feel like that's nice to get to some of that. They have it, there's stocks. I would keep in first. And see, back to the so like they do this exercise, you know, like it's not exactly after that. I experience it well, but not always like stuff. You know, do it, having the longest, yeah, it was that.
Actually speaking to for me, it's like revising myself short. I only have my context. So I would not say to remind yeah, it's like. History, just an element of the.
Helps you.
You know, kind of, we actually moving away from the guys everything. So I went back there. That's really. So I just imagine, I'm trying to be. What to give myself a moment to define.
Yeah, I was thinking more like a really good level of giving this. Jobs. That's what I hear out this. So I need to. Better. That's what I mean. This is like. No matter how that could be. Organization, no, I.
I feel like you can always get better if you track and increase the list. But at the end of the day, it's but I'm pretty good. I don't like it, but I'm also actually caught up in this. But she was really feeling about there was a lot of concerns. It seemed to almost be like trying to go back and forth in a way that felt really uncomfortable for me and not paying attention to those who were maybe being hurt by it. So that was, I had to really do the track. Actually frustrated. I'm a preacher right now and I need to, like, parse that right. It's important to be able to track that and know what's going on for me. That's it. I'm directed a little different than I might have thought as like that, actually.
All right, I think I'll bring us back to the large group. Curious, I know a lot of you have been doing this work for a really long time, have some insights, so we'll try to contextualize this as much as possible in these interactions we're thinking about in the plaza. So curious if anyone had some insights or questions lingering that you all wanted to share out in the large group.
We're talking a little about, it's such a natural instinct to ask what support may be helpful, and I rarely think to do the physical piece. And I was like, oh, I need to start utilizing that a little bit more.
Yeah, it's great. Other thoughts?
I feel like the internal tracking is always an area you can grow and know that you can pay enough attention. Both internally and externally, quite honestly, but I shared that the last time the preacher was here, I noticed at the end of the day, I was really felt pretty defeated by the day. But I've gotten pretty good at like, I don't really care what the preacher says. I tune that out pretty well, right? Like they're vile, my opinion, kind of awful humans. And so I'm not gonna let that get, but I was pretty disappointed in our community in terms of how we didn't care for each other. And there was a real sense of making the arguing back and forth a sport. And so it was really important for me to be able to like, okay, I feel pretty crummy, but what is that? Where's that really coming from? Because I didn't want to then interject with any of our own community, knowing that it was probably more that frustration. So just trying to pay attention to that a little clearer and being sure where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I think when we think about our feelings, we can often identify sad, mad, and that's about it, right? And so, like, can we bring a little bit more nuance to that? What is it that I'm really feeling? What is the source of this? And even just having that conversation with the student is like, helping them come into terms with what they're feeling or thinking right now, or, those kind of questions of I'm wondering how you're resonating with all of this. I see you kind of starting to pull off to the side. and I'm wondering if you're, you're doing all right, which is a great opening question. And, they might not have language yet for how they're feeling, or I'm feeling numb. I don't even know, so then maybe trying to bring them through a couple of these offerings that we've shared could be helpful.
I also want to validate what Lance brought up because I think in how we've been socialized and conditioned in this world, whenever we feel an unpleasant feeling and emotion, we immediately have this urge to make ourselves feel better. And the reality is we may not be able to do that. I know I can't always do that for myself. I don't expect a student to be able to do that for themselves too. But that's why even within our wellness zone, I can still have low energy. I can still hold a level of sadness and still get through my day. And then once I'm in a more comfortable space or when I'm outside of campus and I'm back at home, then I can do more decompressive work. Then I can work to really move myself from sadness to neutral or whatnot. But I don't have to immediately go from sadness to elated because that's a hard task. That's unfair to ask someone to do. And so I just want to kind of relieve ourselves of that pressure to do that for ourselves. And then when we're trying to support students too.
Any other experiences or wisdom that anyone would like to share, or areas you're still feeling like question of how to do this or how to navigate this? I think, as I think about and reflect on this, how we're supporting, I think even just asking some of those questions of what do you need right now? How can I help you get out of this kind of negative headspace that you just told me you're in, or what would that look like? Would you like me to walk with you away from here? And we can talk about it a little bit more. I think those pieces in and of itself can be helpful. It's really the folks that are seeming to be really stuck where we're having to kind of dig into some of these other tools and resources. All right, so just a couple of, one more reminder here. So we just wanted to also put into the space that sometimes you might not be in the space to be able to do this, right? For any number of reasons. So if you're going to be able to show up and care for others, it's probably really difficult to pretend this isn't happening around you when you're feeling really impacted by it. And so I just think it's important, and I know this is a conversation we had with Lance too, is to say, I gotta tap out today. I'm not ready to strangle somebody, or I do not have the emotional capacity to do this work, and knowing that we can lean in and help other people, then it's okay to do that. Then it's okay to rely on others, is that after you've had this hard day, this hard experience, and you're starting to name the emotions you're having, do that with someone else who is out there with you, just because you've had a shared experience, and having a few minutes to process that, I think is really important. So we wanted to make sure that we covered this as well.
I think when you read the slide, it's oh, that's really simple. But I think there's also a certain pressure of well, I'm supposed to be able to be here for students. It's within the workout, right? And so I think we do a lot of that stuff to ourselves of I read that and I'm oh, that's easy enough to be yeah, today's not the day. But then there's still another piece of that voice yeah, but if I'm not out there, who's going to be out there, right? So as simple as it is, it feels like we still have some work. And how do we do that to support each other in the Division of Student Affairs, other folks across campus to really make that feel okay to be yeah, no, I'm not today, but thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just the fact that there are new faces in this space who are also saying I'm willing to show up and do this work is helpful, because sometimes it has been incumbent on the same few people over and over again. And so I feel hopefully we're moving in the right direction and the work that's happening there, because it's much harder to say I'm not in the space for this when I'm the only one here. That's a whole different story. We hope that we can dig a little bit deeper in those instances, but when there are others we can lean on, or at least process with after, I think is something that's really helpful. All right, so we wanted to talk through some more around resources. The first thing is I think it's very unlikely that some of the students we're talking about today will need any sort of immediate additional response from the health center. If that was the case, then we want to share with you ways of doing that. But I think it's just a good one to be reminded that we are here for you. You can walk a student over physically to the health center should you need to. There's also some immediate phone numbers you can call to speak with some staff. And so wanted to make sure you know that. And we just try to remind folks, over and over again that the health center has lots of different resources, lots of different ways of tapping into care and support. And so I wanted just to share a few of those with you. And I think Maria's going to cover the next couple.
So I'm going to talk about the counseling things. There's a QR code here. You'll get the slide, the recording afterwards, but this will take you to our website where you get a list of all of our resources here. The ones that we usually highlight are our drop-in hours. So Monday through Friday from 10 to 4 or 9 to 4, excuse me. Students can come in, don't need an appointment. They don't have to have seen a counselor before and just say like, I need some support. I need to meet with someone. Even then, when they get taken back, that doesn't guarantee that they want therapy. Maybe they just want like a safe spot to land. They want someone to kind of process things with, bounce back with their ideas, and then they're fine. Totally cool. You can do that free of charge. Otherwise, students get 6 sessions a year, which I know is not a lot, but that's what they have. That is what they're paid for. That is what we want them to use. And even though they have individual sessions, they also have many groups and workshops available. So you can kind of choose your own adventure with the support. You can supplement all that fun stuff. So that is on our website. And then I also know the Health Education Preventative Services. They do a lot of workshops too, that you can get students enrolled in. What's within my wheelhouse of care within counseling is our multicultural counseling services. And so we have these multicultural consultation drop-in hours. Again, the QR code will take you to the page, but this is for students from marginalized identities to come in and talk with a multiculturally informed counselor and get some support. It's not counseling, it's consultation. So we kind of go through like that explore, inquiry, action type of way, as opposed to like deep therapy. Absolutely no cost. It's an outreach service, but at least it's a way for a student to get support who may not necessarily want to step in our building or engage in therapy. My hours are actually here at the LSC on Thursdays, 1 to 4. I'm in the SDC office across from El Centro, and people are able to just kind of put their names on a list and they can meet with me. So, there's that.
First of all, are there any questions about some of the resources of the health network that would be helpful? So again, the thing we tell students is their first step is just to come to the health center. Just come to the 3rd floor, ask to meet with a counselor, and they will start you in that process, orient you to all the different resources available. They'll kind of get you set up for the next things. And if a student is in crisis, or you happen to be walking a student over who is in crisis, they will kind of center that first visit around like, let's get you stable right now, right? And so they can do all the great grounding and skills and de-escalation that maybe feel a little bit outside of your wheelhouse. So they could certainly do that in the context of that first appointment, should they need to. Chances are, if you walk a student to the front desk, it's going to be very obvious that that's what you're looking for. But if not, you can say, I'd like a on-call visit right now, or crisis visit right now for this student that I'm with. Like I said, they're probably going to figure that out, but if you had to name it, you could. That way they aren't going to talk about like, what do you need down 3 weeks from now? They're going to talk about what you need right now. And we are telling students that they can come to the health center for that. The other piece I wanted just to share with you all, because I know we're all kind of like bracing, I can feel my shoulders touch my ears when I think of all of the election stress and what is coming up to coming along. It is happening right now, is that we do have an election stress campaign that should start to run. I think this week we might start to see posters circulating around campus. And so this is happening. We'll be doing some messaging around that. We also have a couple of election stress workshops that we've been putting together. Vivian and Stephanie are going to lead one at the Inclusive Excellence Symposium in October. And we can also come out to different groups in doing this. But the goal is to get a really small handout version of this that we could also have available if that is the tenor of what's happening on the plaza. So we're working towards that to give people some really specific skills. And this is sort of a model we've been seeing play out at many, many universities. So we didn't come up with this all on our own. We're able to borrow in from folks who've been doing this work. So I just wanted to share that this is also a piece, and hopefully, should we get there, this could be a piece of paper that you can hand to a student, and it would give them some information about what to do in those instances. All right, I think that's it. So we still have a little time for questions or curiosities or comments y'all would like to share with each other or with us.
It's one thing that I'm thinking about is like, in a lot of ways, this feels like more of helping someone self-regulate than de-escalation, right? De-escalation for me is an intervention into someone who's causing people to be dysregulated, right? So it's more of the other side, like dealing with the person who, like dealing with the preacher, dealing with the student who's yelling at other students, right? Like, how do we engage with those folks so that they're not dysregulating everybody, right? And putting them out of their.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great question. And I think as we were naming and renaming the session, we were kind of going to both ways. And one of the things when I was planning, we were planning this with Lance, was kind of this awareness that it isn't necessarily our role to confront the person who's actually causing all of the harm. But it is to try to like be in a supportive role for those being impacted by it. Because I mean, and I think it's important for us to acknowledge who is doing some of that immediate intervention point with these people who are causing the most harm. So I don't know if others want to weigh in on that conversation. John?
Yeah, I think my ineffectiveness out in the Plaza for years was thinking I could do something to change a preacher. And instead of trying to find ways to support those who may be impacted, which could include myself and colleagues too, not just students. So these efforts more recently have helped me to kind of reset that the preacher is a paid professional, filming people usually, to go show that to somebody else and cares nothing about anything that anybody says. I honestly don't even know if they want people to get arrested when a student does something that legally they could get arrested for. It's the rise. It's the using it as film footage. So I'm trying to, however these things are named, the trainings, I'm trying to just see how I've got to stop spending time with that and more time with just approaching somebody so that they don't get arrested, or approaching somebody more so that if they're really impacted, like, how are you gonna get to class next? What's going on with that? You know, and so. And Lance, I want to thank you. You've helped me and Maggie really too. Just like, it's frightening how much attention I give to the people that don't deserve my attention. And that's so I'm still going through that thing, but I have to unlearn to then see how I apply this to support those impacted.
I kind of want to reframe because preacher's a bad example, right? But there are students who do this, right? Like, they're like, at the games, we're part of the
Totally.
chill squad, right? Like,
Alums who do this.
yeah, exactly. Like literally there's students yelling at the other team, and it's like, we're not gonna go over to the team and say, hey, I'm sorry, how did that land on you, right? Like, we need to go talk to that student and be like, hey, this is not right, right? Like that's the de-escalation that I think, and you know, and especially with politics coming up, there's gonna be Trump people yelling at Harris people and Harris people yelling at Trump people, and it's like, how do we talk to these folks, right?
Yep.
To bring them down, right? Like when they're very passionate about their football team or their, you know, like, so, yeah, I guess it's just.
I appreciate
something I'm
that, Ben.
thinking
I
about.
think you're right. We definitely covered more like helping people self-regulate. That's definitely what we were talking about today. So maybe there's a part two that we can still explore. I don't feel like I have the skills in teaching that, but I do know there's a few others who might be able to do more around de-escalation. And so maybe that's another piece that we try to build in for the next one. So I appreciate that. Yeah, for sure.
And what comes to mind for me, I mean, super simple concept, it is a little bit the idea of challenge and support, and really, you know, I had the probably misfortune to be closely advised one of the students when Charlie Kirk came to campus. And so really trying to figure out, so I did quite a bit of challenging and pushing back, and particularly, you know, they would use this language around, we're really bringing them to dialogue without saying bullshit, say bullshit, you're not. And that's okay. You don't know anybody that this isn't your job, but like, don't lie to people about it. And then trying to do the support of like, hey, people are, you know, I'm getting threatening phone calls. Okay, let's talk through that and support you in that way. So I do think that model of some of these skills still work a lot too, of like, hey, when somebody says they think your politics suck, well, how are you experiencing that? What are you doing? Or why do you feel the need to say that to somebody else? What are you like? Is that just, are you trying to hurt somebody? Well, no, not really. It's just, I don't feel like I'm hurt. Okay, now we can have a different conversation where these skills do come in. If it is, yeah, I just really want to hurt them and piss them off, that goes back to sort of like the preachers of like, okay, I don't have much for you. I don't have a lot to offer if that is ultimately your goal. Unfortunately. So I'm gonna go, at that point, focus on the people that you're being prone to.
I do want to say I really appreciated everything that was presented today. I was just, there was just something that was in the back of my head.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. That's been a lot of the pre-conversation with like, heck, yeah, how do we do that, and trying to really hear from, and again, building it around the preachers, but you're right, that's not the only thing, but really hearing that place of like, our students are not feeling enough support from us. So how do we more actively do that intentionally, thoughtfully, and better?
Anything else? Or anything you wanted to close with? Thanks for.
Thank you so much.
Hello. Hi. Something that in that last conversation that came to mind, that's actually the second time I've talked about this today, is in my, and I don't know like where this lives or if it's even like a best practice, but when I was in grad school, I worked in like wellness and prevention, and health education. So I got my diploma.
Nice.
And our office oversees